Okay, we are live. Woo! I was having some technical difficulties. I don't know why. I mean, it took a minute for like the little spinning wheel to work out. So, hello everyone. Welcome in. So excited to have you. This is the Secure the Bag Book Club where we talk about securing assets for ourselves. And we do it through learning through different books and that talk about the different assets that we can acquire. Right now, we're talking about intellectual property. The book we have that we're working on right now is You Are an IP Company. We are in week 3. And I'm very excited about that because we are just cruising right along through the book. We've covered a lot of ground, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation today. Just FYI, page 103 to page 141 is what we read for this week, this past week. And those chapters, for those that are using the audiobook and don't necessarily know the page numbers, those chapters include CrossFit is an IP company, Seed Spark is an IP company, and Fortnite is an IP company. I see a participant. Welcome. I can't see exactly who's participating, but I can see you if you post something in the chat. So make sure you shout out yourself in the chat, and I'll be able to see you by username that way. So welcome to those that are participating live. And for those who are watching later on, would love for you to comment in the comment section just to let us know that you're here and you're following along and you have thoughts, and you can share those thoughts in the discussion. Okay. So I wanted to get into the first chapter that we talked about, which was CrossFit is an IP company, and it goes into talking about the business model of CrossFit. For those who don't know what CrossFit is a style of workout where it's like high intensity interval training, all those kinds of things. And it's really intense and really hard, notoriously hard. And different gyms offer these sessions, services. They can devote the entire gym to CrossFit. It can be an entire CrossFit gym, or it can just be, we have CrossFit classes. Yay. So the interesting thing I did not realize is that when people talk about CrossFit classes, they are using intellectual property. So in the book, page 104, it says, rather than scaling the business by opening CrossFit gyms across the country, the company allows gyms to purchase licensing rights if they want to use the CrossFit brand. This has allowed CrossFit to grow quickly and profit through independent gyms. I thought that was really cool, and it made me think. And then they go on to talk about Orange Theory in contrast. So I thought that was interesting because when you think about your own intellectual property, right, and the ways that you can monetize it versus just kind of protecting it to make sure that your brand, your reputation, your company or whatever is protected in that way and is not kind of infringed on by other companies or other people who want to use it without your permission. So I thought that was interesting because the way that people make money through licensing, through they have licensing, they have affiliate deals, all those kinds of things, is very useful because it shows that you don't just have to say, okay, I just want to make sure that nobody uses my name without permission, but also I want to encourage people to use my name and use it in a way that I find to be responsible, I find to be lucrative, I find to be enhancing of that particular property, which enhances the value of it, right? And y'all let me know in the chat where you're coming from. Let me know if you thought this part of the book was pretty interesting and whatnot. Now, I will say that, the Diane Michelle says, good point, makes you seem like you thought ahead. Agreed. And you know how, like, some companies or some influencers, okay, so like them or not, the Kardashians, right? They started with, I don't know the full, like, origin stories of the Kardashian brand. Y'all may know better than me. I don't follow as closely, but I know that they started with, having the TV show, and then they had like brick and mortar clothing stores, and then they had other products and things like that they, and then they did sponsorships and endorsements and all those kinds of things, and that grew the Kardashian brand, right? And they have intellectual property that they protect and that they encourage people to use to enhance their brand. So I thought that that was interesting. um, it also pointed out that CrossFit has also expanded its trademark to include apparel, food, and training equipment, ensuring that the brand is protected from infringement. Let me see if it. Diane Michelle says, "Yeah, the Kardashian K, everything was an error for sure." See, there you go. And I think that when you think about expanding your intellectual property offerings, right? When you're thinking long view, like to Diane Michelle's point, when you're thinking ahead to what could be a good use of your product, services, intellectual property, all that good stuff, you have to consider what other classes of goods would make sense for you to have a trademark or a copyright or things like that in place. Yes, on page 106, it mentioned that CrossFit operates as an affiliate business model that allows gym owners to become independently licensed affiliates, whereas Orange Theory, so Orange Theory is another gym that's really popular, and or a fitness brand, I should say, that's really popular, and they have gyms all over the place nationally. And Orange Theory actually operates with the franchise business model. So franchisees own and operate their specific location or business under the franchisor's brand and system, but they must follow strict guidelines and procedures set by the franchisor. So the classic example is McDonald's, right? You go to any McDonald's and they have the same system, they have the same products, they have the same way of, cooking your fries, they have the same uniform, they have the same golden arches on the outside and whatnot. Like, you see very little variation, and that's by design. That is encouraged by the franchisor, and that is how the brand is protected, because you don't have all these independent business owners kind of like throwing things out there like, oh yeah, we're gonna try I don't know, whatever food that doesn't necessarily work with the burgers and fries model that the original McDonald's kind of like uses, is tried and true. And it says also that brand value is gained through consumer recognition, which ensures uniform usage and consistent marketing materials. So again, it's that thing of like, when we talk about property and we talk about protecting it, that is the way to do it. Is to have uniformity, is to have consistency in the way that the brand is executed, whether that is through agreements with other established entities or how you execute your own brand. So I thought that was really cool. I also considered other business models. So there's CrossFit, which is the affiliate model, and then there's Orange Theory, which is the franchise model. But then there's also certifications. So I thought about Zumba, the dance workout or whatever, Zumba. That you can be a certified Zumba instructor, and then of course they have Zumba um, uh, conferences and things like that, where like the instructors get together and kind of like the events and everything, and just to encourage collaboration from other instructors, but also to encourage like the brand and all those things. So again, there's that foundation of having that intellectual property to then expound upon when you're considering what business model makes sense, right? To execute that property. Um, then it talked about it also on page 107. It talked about different variations and distinctions in trademarks, such as fanciful marks, arbitrary marks, suggestive marks, descriptive marks, and generic terms. So they talked about like fanciful marks, which are like invented words with no real meaning, such as Kodak for cameras. And then arbitrary marks, which are the use of common words that have that aren't used in an ordinary meaning way, right? So when you think about Apple, it's not the fruit, it's the computer. So that is not necessarily the ordinary way there. And then of course you have suggestive marks, which suggest a quality or characteristic of the goods or services, but require some imagination to connect with them to the product, such as Netflix for streaming, right? Net, internet, flicks, movies. There you go. And then descriptive marks and generic terms. I'm not going to go into detail with that whole thing, but I thought that was a very nice point to make, because when you're considering your brand, right? So my brand is What Brooks Pent. It's distinctive because it's my name, but it's not distinctive in the sense that there's a million Brooks. So the combination of words is protected under copyrights, trademarks, things like that. And I think that looking at these distinctions in the book will also get your wheels turning when you're like, I want to be different. I want to have, maybe a different social media handle, or I want to have a different company name that like sets me apart in the marketplace so that I'm recognized, but also in intellectual property so that it's easier to protect my name. Because when you have generic terms like bread, for example, then you can't, protect that. Like if your bakery was named Bread, So it's things like that that you have to consider. And then on page 130 to 131, and let me know if this if there's anything that you're just like, yeah, that makes me consider something about my own thoughts about intellectual property, about what it means to protect it, all that good stuff in the chat, because I can't see I can't see y'all, and I don't know who's tuning in unless you post in the chat or in the comments later, and I'll of course respond to it later. So on page 130, it mentions the 6 Ds of tech disruption. The 6 Ds are digitization, deception, disruption, demonetization, dematerialization, and democratization. And it just kind of like walks through how we have used technology to kind of compound growth as businesses, as brands. It talked about how because of digitization, costs are lower, right? It costs less to have a digital product than it does to have a physical product, right? It requires less maintenance, right? Storage, all those kinds of things, right? And then it also talks about how things kind of just like explode. You see certain brands like, Uber, right? That was really disruptive in the transportation industry, right? And the reason is because they utilize technology, and that's why you see a lot of startups utilizing technology, because, it allows for low cost and allows for exponential growth. So there is that. The Diane Michelle said, "Is this why a business name that's made up versus someone's real name gets confusing? Like Cardi B was a variation of Bacardi or something. They made her change it. I don't know." Um, so in the instance of Cardi B versus Bacardi, I remember in her, so her little sister's name is Hennessy. Literally, it's Hennessy, and which is a liquor brand and or an alcohol brand, whatever. And so in in their neighborhood or whatever, in their circles, they were known as Hennessy, and they nicknamed Cardi Bacardi. But then when she was using it for commercial purposes or for, to commerce and stuff like that, Bacardi sent her a cease and desist, which is something that you can do with your intellectual property. When you have the rights to it, you can send people a cease and desist that allows them to then say like, oh, okay, I got to stop using this for money. Yeah, there's other reasons for it, such as reputation. If you're, kind of defaming them or kind of deteriorating their brand in some way or whatever, then that's also a reason for a cease and desist. So that is the reason behind why Cardi B's particular situation was the way that it was. But I would encourage you to consider, a business name that is not as generic or not as close to other brands, because there's another case. It's Louis Vuitton versus Louis Vuitton, like chicken or something like that. Anyways, it was this like fried chicken place, Korean fried chicken place in Korea that used like a very luxury, kind of like aesthetic in their like design of their restaurant, and it was for chicken. So they thought it was okay to use, Louis Vuitton whatever chicken as their name, because it wasn't in the same category, fashion brand or clothing brand or whatever, as Louis Vuitton, the fashion brand. But Louis Vuitton was like, no, too close. And they sued and won. So then the restaurant then had to change their name. So look up that case. Fascinating, but it also kind of offers a bit of legal precedent as far as like how important it is to not, not be too close to something that is a larger brand, So there you go. Hey, Caitlin Foster, welcome back. I remember you from the first broadcast, so glad you joined us again, and thank you for posting in the chat. I did want to point out that after a few pages, this particular section of the book kind of got a little repetitive. Like there's the seed spark chapter. I was like, nothing new in here. Also, they kind of rambled on about one of the author's story, which was not particularly helpful. It was actually really salesy. And there has been some really like, again, you're talking about the QR code. Again, you're talking about the bonus materials that aren't really helpful. They're just kind of like pitching the product, which is instant IP. And I don't know, just a reaction that I have of the book, because this is a book club. It's not just, me praising the book. It's also me kind of offering a little bit of critique. And so if y'all felt that way, let me know in the chat or in the comments. But that's how I felt when, they were kind of going on and on about that in some of the book, in some of the chapters. The last thing I will say about the 6 Ds of disruption is that going back in the book to all the way back to page 21, they mentioned this stat, which was that in 1975, 83% of assets owned by S&P 500 companies were tangible, right? But then contrast that to 2020, only 10% of assets were tangible. And if you consider things like, Apple, who has, the iPhone, if only 10% of their assets is actually the phone itself, the physical phone, but then all the IP that is rolled into an iPhone and the Apple brand and the different stores and all that good stuff, how they, market, all that is protected IP that then shows how digital disruption has contributed to a shift in what is considered valuable to a company. So I feel like that encourages us as people that are looking to own assets, that it's not just oh, I don't have, a building to, point to and say, look, my company is valuable because we have this building that we own, or I don't have, physical money or stocks or whatever yet, because we'll be talking about that later. I think that's something that I feel like that's a kind of encouraging. I don't know. You can tell me. Last thing is, on page 135, there is an IP protection comparison chart that's really helpful. It compares like the time and the cost and the process and benefits of getting a copyright versus a trademark versus a patent, that I think is helpful. And then I just wanted to briefly touch on what we are looking forward to next, because next week is our last, not our last meeting, but our last meeting for this particular book. And we are going to be talking about companies like Disney, Lego, Dr. Pepper, there's Apple, here we go, and Magnolia Company, which is like the designer brand, the home goods brand. And I think they have something else too, but Chip and Joanna. There you go. The ones you see in Target. There you go. And on like HGTV and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that part of the book. I don't know about you, but really curious about those particular brands. I also had a very interesting conversation about Disney. Y'all remind me on the next stream. I had a conversation with someone who is familiar with IP law about Disney and like the shady things that they've been doing to, kind of encourage changes in the law concerning IP. So really looking forward to that. So looking forward to seeing you all next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on What Brooke Spent, the YouTube channel. And we'll be finishing out the rest of the book. And then, and also we'll have a little discussion, probably at the beginning of next week's stream, about what you guys are interested in learning about for the next book, and I can start looking into some materials that we can look into. So when you're considering things like assets like real estate, or whether it's commercial real estate or residential real estate, or those kinds of things, I have my own real estate story to tell, so we can kind of get into a book about that. Or we can talk about stocks, we can talk about what other things are there? Yeah, there's plenty of other assets that like art, buying art. That's another thing that we could talk about. That's pretty accessible, I would say. So yeah, let's talk about what we're looking forward to. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the stream today, and I will see y'all on next week, or in the comments between then and now. So take care.